Hey everybody, Tanner Garcia here today, coming to you this Sunday, December 1st. Had to look at my calendar right quick. And today I'm just looking to cover my take on mistakes that I've made from the time that I started almost 3 years ago until where I'm at right now, that had I understood a little bit better or had I focused on a little more when I first started, I think I could have been better from an earlier point. Now, of course, all of this is subjective and all of this is just from my personal experience and what it is that I look at whenever I'm shooting portraits to try and make my shots better, not waste the talent's time, not waste my time, and also make post-production a lot easier. The less time that I can spend editing, the happier that I am. And I think that maybe that should be a good way to look at it. Unless, of course, you're doing some high value production, big extravagant edits that you're trying to make like crazy piece of surreal art, then of course there's always going to be editing time. But again, all this is subjective. First thing that I want to talk about is your highlights absolutely blowing out a photo. Now, in one of my earlier videos, I talked about your ISO settings and shutter speed and aperture settings. So if we take a look right here, this is my friend Orlando. This was shot maybe a year and a half ago, and I was still learning a lot. And what you can see here is that the sun is picking up on his shaved head and it's causing really hot spots, and that doesn't look flattering to him. Orlando's a very handsome gentleman, and this photo unfortunately does not do him justice. I could probably go back and tone down the highlights some more. I haven't edited this photo since I first took it, but looking at it, I could probably save some of it. It isn't as bad as other photos that I have taken, but the problem with blowing out your highlights is there's no detail to recover in post. And once you take that picture and you leave it at that and you don't shoot it again, you're stuck with one of two options. Either you just lost the shot completely, or you're gonna have to go back and redo it. I try and shoot a little darker than what I think I need to do. With the Sony a7 III, it does really great in pulling detail out from the shadows. Now, I'm not going crazy when I do this, but I do find myself shooting a little bit underexposed, maybe by half a stop, maybe a stop. When it comes to editing, then I'm able to get a lot more detail without having hot spots. Now, I wasn't able to find the picture. I probably deleted it because I was embarrassed of my work and I just never wanted to see it again. But it was a picture of a grandfather playing in the parking lot with his toddler granddaughter in front of a school that had been shut down, that was going to be demolished, or maybe already has been demolished. I haven't been by there recently. And it was I know I really liked the picture. It was very minimalistic. There was a good amount of sky in there, but when I edited the photo, I ended up making the sky look a little bit purple. Well, I made it look a lot purple. Not quite as much as my background, but in my mind, when I first edited it, I was like, oh man, this looks crazy cool. This is badass. It's different. And no, I just looked like what I was, and that was very amateur. So over editing, just try not to process your images to where it just looks ridiculous. And then the same thing goes for under editing. A lot of times skin isn't perfect. I know I don't have perfect anything by any means, but if I was taking a picture for somebody and I was getting paid and it was my job to make them look good, it wasn't a documentary style photo shoot, it wasn't like an editorial of any sort, then yeah, I mean, take the time to edit the photo and correct the colors and correct skin tones, straighten the image. I mean, just take a little bit of time. You don't have to spend days on it, but take a little bit of time to make them look as good as you can, within reason of what you're being paid or what your time frame allows you to do so. But I cannot stand to see unedited portrait photos being displayed as work. Now, I'm sure I'll get some hate comments, and this is just in general, and this is speaking from beginner's terms. There are plenty of photos that I've seen out there from very high-end professional photographers that don't need editing, or that aren't edited, that look more phenomenal than my edited work does, and that's fine. But until I get to that point, until anybody gets to that point, it's very rare, I'll say it's very rare and seldom to see a photograph that doesn't need some work done to it in post in order to make it presentable for a portfolio or to deliver to a client. So again, my perspective only from what it is that I've been working on. Let's see here. Next image would be focus points. So as a portrait photographer, I feel that it's very important to always have your subject in focus. Whenever you're photographing a person, I believe the most important part to focus on, and it is somewhat a rule of thumb, would be their eyes. Whatever eye seems to be closest to the lens, so if they're tilted, you know, with their left side towards the lens a little bit more, then get that left eye in focus, or vice versa on the right side. And if you've ever taken a picture and then focuses on something in the background, or you catch focus on the tip of their nose, it really throws the rest of the image off, and it could be a fantastic image had it been in focus. So again, the camera that I use has a great eye autofocus system on there. Unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity to try out other cameras. I'm hoping as I progress with this channel that I'll get the opportunity to meet people that have other cameras that they might let me take them for a spin and see how they perform. But yeah, so absolutely, by all means, try and get the eyes in focus. When you have a wide aperture, yes, you're going to get a blown out background, and yes, it's going to get nice and blurry, and it's really going to make your subject pop. But if you're not careful, that small depth of field might just miss their eye, and it's really easy to miss focus on a wide open aperture. So whenever you're shooting, by all means, stop for just a minute, look into your viewfinder or look at the back of your screen, depending on the kind of camera that you have, and just zoom in on the eye and make sure that you have the eye in focus. It's going to save you a world of hurt a little bit later on. So the next thing I want to talk about is composition. Watching what you're doing in camera will save you a world of time when it comes to editing. So making sure that you're not cutting out the tips of the fingers, the tips of the toes, or cutting somebody off at their ankle, cutting somebody off on their shin, cutting somebody off at their knees even can look really bad. So just take a moment to really focus on what it is that you're doing. If you're doing a portrait session, take your time, take a couple of minutes, take a step back and shoot a little bit wide if you have to. Take a look. If you see that you can zoom in or walk in closer on the subject, then by all means do so. Really watch for your feet, really watch for the elbows, really watch for the hands. There's been so many pictures that I've taken. I have tons of photos that I should go through and find examples of, but I've shot some. I did one shoot inside a Walmart at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was a lot of fun. And when I got back to my computer and I threw my images on the screen so I could start editing and going through them, there were some that were just bangers, but I cut the tips of her Converse off. There were some that were just amazing and her ankle was out of frame. There were some that were amazing and the tip of a finger, just like one little friggin' tip, was just not, and it just made the picture look like trash overall. And so it really made me stop and take a look at what I'm doing. So this is a picture that I took for one of my friend's little sisters, and I got more images that work, but this is just an example of what I'm talking about. I wasn't paying attention when I was shooting, and this was just a couple of months ago, and I cut off her fingers and hand, and the picture itself looks, to me, I like the picture, but unfortunately it doesn't work for me because of where I got her hands in frame. So I can probably just zoom in a little bit and crop this picture and cut it off and kind of make it more of a headshot. Again, if I had just taken just a moment to take a step back and look at what I was doing and why I was doing it, I would have saved myself a lot of time and energy and effort in post trying to figure out a way to save the image. So this just goes to show that even after almost 3 years of shooting, so I still have to remind myself about these little tips that I'm talking about, but at the same time, all the little points, and just really have like a mental note, a checklist, if you will, and go through, hey, is my composition right? Am I shooting in RAW over JPEG? And just really take a moment to step back and look at what it is that I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So we're going to take a look at cropping. So right here we see the picture that I took, and once I started editing, again, had I taken the time to pay attention to what I was doing at the moment, I would have asked her to fix her hair on the right side of the screen, brush it down with her fingers a little bit. And unfortunately I didn't, and trying to take out this much hair in post is just a nightmare. So playing around with it, I really like this picture. I really like the look in her face. I really like the lighting. I decided to crop in and crop the image, and this is what I came up with right here. So I got in really tight, still kept the majority of her face in there. Now something like this to me is a little bit more artistic. This wasn't a shoot for anything other than just to make some Instagram content at the time, going out and having some fun. And this picture and a couple of other pictures in this set I'll talk about, but as much as I tried, I personally couldn't get it to look right. So I decided to go ahead and go with the crop, and in cropping the image so that I could try and save this image, because I really like the expression on her face. I like the lighting. I think everything about it is great. This was the image that I came up with. And if you look right here, I don't know, to me it has this really cool cyberpunk feel to it. So I feel I was still able to save this image, but again, I would have preferred the first image over this one. So then again, stopping to take my time with the photos to get it done in camera instead of in post would have saved me a ton of time and heartache. So next picture that I want to talk about. So this shoot right here, part of the other shoot with that other picture that I showed a little while ago, this is my friend Emily. I went ahead and I was talking with Emily, and I asked her if she wanted to be the creative director of this shoot. And she came up with this wonderful idea. We've seen other people do it, but I wasn't sold when she told me. And so she was like, hey, I think we should go to the car wash and shoot inside the car wash. I'm like, the car wash? I pass by that car wash all the time, and there's nothing special about it. It's a friggin' hallway that you drive through and washes your car. Like, why do you want to go into a car wash? And then she's just like humor me. So I'm like, all right, here we go. So we go to the car wash. And as we walk in there, it's already, later in the evening, it's a slow night, so there isn't a lot of traffic there. And we're walking along on the inside, making sure not to trip or fall on anything. And we just start walking around and playing with lights, and this is what popped up. And I think it's a fantastic image. It has this cyberpunk feel to it that I absolutely love. And it just works out really, really great. So one thing that I think beginners should do is be open to somebody else's creativity if you're working with them. I would have missed out on some great shots had I stuck to my guns, if you will, and said, no, I don't want to go shoot inside a car wash, because at the time I thought it was not the best of ideas, and I was really wrong. So this kind of leads a little bit to being open to constructive criticism. So if you're just starting out there, keep an open mind on where about it is that you might want to go and shoot. And then part of this shoot is one of my favorite images as well. I have a problem with shooting at eye level. And when I say shooting at eye level, I think that when portraits, or if you're trying to be artistic, or if you're shooting artistic, shooting at eye level, it's just giving somebody, and somebody looks at that picture, it looks like they're looking at that image as if they were standing there. And there's nothing about that will pop out. There's nothing about an eye level shot to me that stands out. Now in this photo, I am eye level with her, but what makes it different is we're crouched down and kneeling down on the ground off to the side. And so this was the image that I shot, and this image right here is my edit. So if you notice, I took that one strand of hair that looked like that it was coming out of her mouth and straightened out the image, and then started messing with the contrast, started messing with the highlights, and just gave it more of a punchy vibe. So when everything's said and done, I was really excited with these photos. I really enjoyed them. I think Emily and Heather absolutely crushed it when it came to being my subject matter for this shoot. And again, it took a little while for me to open up and allow somebody else to give me some, not necessarily guidance, but for somebody else to give me their input and say, hey, you know, this might actually work. And lastly, options to be more interesting in what it is that you're shooting, as opposed to just, oh, here I am, zoom in, okay, I got a tight shot, zoom out, I got a wide shot. Instead, walk up to them with your camera and get close, or step back and get further out, or squat down, or kneel down, or lay down, or use leading lines like just move, don't stay static. You need to be walking around in circles, and just watch the way that the light plays off of them. If you're using natural light, I mean, pay attention to where the light's coming from, and don't just shoot them with the sun at their back, or don't shoot them with just the sun on their face, but have them walk around in a circle and walk around with them, so that you can see how the light changes on their face, and it can completely change the mood of the photograph. To recap, my take on all this is going to be: one, your blown highlights, shoot a little bit underexposed if you have to. Easier to pull details out of shadows than trying to recoup anything from highlights. Over editing or under editing, try to learn when you should stop. I mean, that's all it comes down to, is try and learn when you should stop. Focus points: if you're shooting portraits, really try and nail focus on the eye before you focus on anything else. That's going to be a game changer when it comes to having great photos. Your composition: pay attention to where your subject is. If you're not comfortable with the rule of thirds, if you haven't gone into your grid lines on your camera, just be safe and shoot with your subject dead in the center for the time being until you get a little bit more comfortable with composition. But again, if you're gonna cut them at the leg, cut them mid-thigh. If you're gonna do a headshot, cut them at mid-arm, above the elbow, under the shoulder. Don't just have a floating head. That looks really odd and weird. Pay attention to feet, pay attention to hands, and make sure you get them in frame. It's always easier to do as much work as you can in camera, so you don't have to go back afterwards and try and fix it in post. The other one would be cropping. If you're gonna crop, make sure that your crop makes sense. Crop for a reason. Don't just crop an image to crop an image. Sometimes it might be the only way that you can save an image, or sometimes for whatever reason, while you're shooting, the composition that you wanted to get, you couldn't achieve in camera, so that'd be one way to try and achieve your composition afterwards. But crop for a reason. Don't shoot everything at eye level. Don't just stand there and hold the camera right in front of you and blast away. Use your legs and move around. Use your legs and zoom with your legs. Squat down, kneel down, because when somebody sees your image, they're gonna see it from a different angle that they normally don't see something. I doubt people walk around and say, oh man, that person looks great right there, let me squat down and take a gander and see if they look any better if I, you know, do this, that, or the other. So just have fun with it, you know, get creative with it, but try not to shoot everything flat on. And then of course, just be creative. Just actually get out there and get your camera. So again, it doesn't matter if you have a Sony A9 II, an A7 III, a Lumix, a Fuji 10 billion megapixel camera, or if you're shooting on a 35mm, a disposable camera, your cell phone. I mean, it just doesn't matter. Just grab something and get out there and start shooting and having fun. And keep in mind, these are just my personal tips, things that I work on and I struggle to. And keep in mind, these are just my personal tips. It's nothing set in stone. Rules are always meant to be broken. I agree with that. But at the same time, maybe learn some of the rules first before you go and break them. That way, when you do break them, you know that you're breaking them for a reason. So I really hope you guys enjoyed watching this video today. If you feel that you gained anything from this, feel free to go ahead and hit that like button. If you're not already subscribed, by all means, hit that subscribe button. And until next time. Oh, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Tanner Garcia Photo. Link in the description below. Laters.